A teenage girl boards a flight. Ticket in hand, seat confirmed first class. She's calm, polite, and black. Minutes later, a slap echoes through the cabin. The reason, "You don't belong here," the flight attendant sneers. Her response. Just 5 words, softly spoken, but thunderous. "My dad owns this system. But who is Leora Wynn? Why does her name shake an entire airline to its core? And what hidden technology buried in the seatbacks of every plane has the power to shut down an entire terminal with one press?" This isn't just a story about a girl being wronged. It's about what happens when the system built to protect fails, and the person it failed learns how to rewrite the rules. What would you do if speaking up meant risking everything, but staying silent meant becoming invisible? Get ready for a story of quiet strength, emotional reckoning, and a voice that forces an entire industry to listen. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because what you're about to witness, it's not just a moment, it's a movement. It happened so fast no one had time to pretend it didn't. A sharp crack rang out in Cabin A of Haven Sky Flight NR 1809 moments before the final boarding call. Forks froze mid-air. A businessman dropped his newspaper. The soft jazz playing through the overhead speakers was suddenly too loud, and at the center of it all stood a 15-year-old girl. Brown skin, braided hair tucked under a navy hoodie. Seat 2A, first class. Her cheek was red, not from the cold air conditioning, but from the slap that echoed louder than the engines warming up outside. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She just sat still, fingers lightly pressed against her cheek, eyes forward. The flight attendant, Darla Moffat, still stood over her, breathing hard, hand half raised. Anger, disbelief. Something else in her face. Something colder. "You think lying gets you a luxury seat," Darla hissed. "I told you to move to economy. Now." Other passengers shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke up. No one stopped her, except the girl. She reached slowly into the front pocket of her hoodie. No sudden movements, no words, just calm. From it, she pulled a silver objects leak, palm-sized, unbranded. It looked like a phone, but with no screen, just one small black button. She placed it on the armrest, pressed once, a soft click. That was it. Then, finally, she spoke. "I didn't lie, and you just activated something you can't undo." Darla blinked. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I told you. My dad owns this airline's ethical protocol system. You're delusional." The girl looked out the window now, calm, still pressing lightly on her cheek. The window view showed a line of tarmac lights blurring into the night. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You just triggered a silent review. This plane isn't taking off." 5 rows behind her, someone finally pulled out a phone. Another passenger whispered. "Did she just press something?" a teenage boy in 4C muttered. "That wasn't a regular phone." "In the cockpit." A soft tone chimed on the alert system. The co-pilot leaned toward the main monitor. Captain, we've got a message from HQ, internal hold, level 2, protocol." The pilot frowned. "That's new. Wait, did they say? Protocol CN. Yep, clear view. Ethics node says review in progress, lock flight path." On the ground, at the Haven Sky Central Ops Center in Atlanta, red lights blinked to life on the send dashboard. One terminal flashed repeatedly. Flight NR 1809. Suspicion of Tier 1. Passenger rights violation locked. A technician stared at it, stunned. Whoa. That's never been triggered on a live flight. Back in seat 2A. The girl Leora Wynn pulled her hoodie sleeves over her hands, tried not to tremble. Her cheeks still stung. But her thoughts raced harder. She hadn't wanted this. Not like this. But when you're raised by a man who builds systems meant to protect dignity, sometimes the only way to test them is to see if they work, when no one knows who you are. And right now, the system was about to scream louder than she ever could. The gate number blinked softly on the screen overhead. 12B, Haven Sky Flight, NR 1809, boarding now. Outside the windows, the sky was bruising into twilight. Inside, people moved like practiced shadows, business suits, backpacks, earbuds, coffee cups. Boarding passes glowed blue and green under scanners, and standing silently in the priority boarding lane was Leora Wynne, hands in the pockets of her oversized hoodie, back straight, eyes focused, but tired. She wasn't wearing anything flashy. No designer handbag, no shiny tech, just a printed boarding pass and a soft, almost nervous breath. She checked in early. Her father had made sure of that. The ticket was legit, paid through an internal route tied to a private ethics operations fund. The name printed on it, Leora G., Win Seat 2A, First Class, authorized under Clearview. Tier 1. But when she reached the scanner, the gate agent squinted. "Sweetheart," the woman said slowly, "this is probably a mistake." Leora tilted her head. "It's not." The agent gave a forced smile. "We just don't usually see kids in this section, especially without a companion. It's valid. You can scan it." The agent did. It beeped green. Still. She frowned. "Wait here a sec. Please." Passengers walked past. A man in a tailored coat muttered, "Unaccompanied minors shouldn't fly first class anyway." A woman nearby chuckled. Another person said it louder, as if trying to make a point. This is why they shouldn't open these sections to just anyone with a pass. Leora said nothing, just stared ahead. Her fingers curled slightly inside her sleeves, not from fear, from memory. A few months ago, her father had sat her down over tea and lemon muffins. Dr. Gabriel Wynne, founder of Clearview, the ethics compliance protocol system installed in several American aviation hubshad, looked tired that morning. "You know what the scariest thing is?" he asked her. "What?" "When you build something to protect people, but you're not sure the world is ready to use it." Gently. Leora nodded. "So what do? You test it. Quietly. With someone they won't expect. Someone who has nothing to prove, but everything to document." She knew then. He was talking about her. Back at Gate 12B, the agent handed back her pass, now expressionless. "It checks out. You're fine to board." Leora gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Thank you." As she walked toward the jet bridge, she heard one more voice behind her. A low murmur, but pointed. Bet she snuck a corporate tag. Someone's going to throw her right back to coach. Once on the plane, the warm lighting of first class greeted her. Seat 2A sat by the window, a blanket folded on the cushion. Leora placed her backpack under the seat, slipped into the chair, and pulled her hoodie up. She exhaled, not relief, just stillness. That's when Darla Moffat arrived. She didn't smile, didn't offer water, didn't even check her name, just looked her up and down and asked, "Miss, are you lost?" "No, this is seat 2A, first class." "I know." Darla gave a brittle chuckle. "No offense, but you sure this is you?" Leora didn't answer. She didn't need to. The tone was familiar, not curious, not confused, assumptive. As if Leora's presence was an error in the algorithm of this space. Then, the moment came. Darla reached for the armrest. "I need you to come with me." And when Leora didn't move fast enough, that hand, the slap, the shock. The moment that would shake the industry hadn't even landed yet. But the clock had started ticking. 3 weeks before the flight, in a quiet home office in Raleigh, North Carolina, Dr. Gabriel Wynn stood at the whiteboard, dry erase marker in hand, eyebrows furrowed. Behind him, the word "seen" was underlined 3 times. Clearview Ethics Node. It didn't look like much on paper. A few blocks, some arrows, a phrase boxed in red, responsive justice, documented disruption. He turned to his daughter, who sat cross-legged on the couch, biting a pen cap. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "No," Leora admitted. "But maybe that's why I should do it." Sen wasn't just a tracker. It wasn't some watchdog app for angry customers. It was built to be invisible until it had to act. A silent ethics response protocol. No human input needed to begin review. No warning lights. No loud alarms. Just a ripple. One button, pressed by someone previously flagged under CN Access Tier 1. And the system would freeze operations, escalate to oversight, and start a passive scan through every layer of infrastructure video feeds, passenger history, staff conduct reports, biometric reactions, not to punish, to observe, and record. The system didn't scream. It listened. That was the whole point. Gabriel had built it after watching too many cases go unheard. Passengers ejected. Mothers with accents accused of lying. Teens detained for being suspicious. No one listened until there was blood, or video, or lawsuits. So he asked himself, what if we could detect the moment dignity was dismissed? In real time. What if we didn't wait for someone to yell fire, but noticed the smoke, the silence, the look on someone's face before things unraveled? Leora had seen it, too. She remembered the woman at the Denver terminal last summer, crying quietly after being pulled from line and searched in front of her child. No apology, no reason, just suspicion, masked as protocol. No one said a word, not even her. So when Gabriel proposed a field test, it wasn't really a question. He handed her a silver prototype. Flat, smooth, no screen, just the button. "You'll board normally," he said. "You'll act like any traveler, and if something happens, you press once. That's it. It won't freeze everything. Not right away. It'll just start listening." Leora paused. What if nothing happens? Gabriel smiled. Then maybe we finally did something right. But now sitting in 2A, cheek still stinging, breath catching. She knew. Something had happened. The system was listening. 10,000 feet below, at the Clearview Node Monitoring Hub in Denver, a green terminal pulsed to life. A notification blinked in soft white passenger WIN, L. Send Tier 1 user. Incident triggered mode observation activated, NR 1809, live flight lockout. In progress auto escalation, FAA. Scene oversight, Airline Ethics Board, and in the corner of that screen, barely visible. A time-stamped clip, a flight attendant, a raised hand, a girl who didn't yell, just looked straight ahead, back on the plane. Leora leaned her forehead gently against the window. She didn't want power. She wanted proof. Proof that when dignity was erased, the system didn't wait for outrage. It documented. It echoed. And if no one around her saw her pain, maybe now, the machine would. The cabin lights dimmed just a fraction. Not enough for most to notice. But Leora Wynn noticed. So did the co-pilot. A soft flicker passed through the LED status lights above seat rows. An almost imperceptible pulse, like a breath the plane didn't mean to take. It had begun. At Haven Sky Airlines Command Center in Atlanta, 2 technicians sipped from mismatched mugs while cross-checking departure logs. Nothing unusual, until one screen blinked red. Send protocol initiated flight, NR 1809 Class Tier 1, passenger rights violation code. 718. The older tech leaned forward. Wait, code 718. That's active. On a live flight. The younger one swallowed hard. Looks like it. Note initiated. AES signature verified. They exchanged a glance. One word came next. Quiet. Waited. Certain. Win. Back on the plane. The captain's voice came through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've encountered a minor technical issue. We'll be taxiing back briefly for an operational check. Please remain seated. There was no turbulence, no engine issue, no reroute. Just a quiet lockdown no one could override. Darla Moffat, the flight attendant who had slapped Leora, paced near the galley, agitated. She whispered to the lead attendant, "They're grounding us." "What for?" I followed procedure. "You raised your voice to a passenger in first class." "She didn't belong there." The lead attendant winced. "You think she didn't belong there, but the system says otherwise. That girl's pass was flagged, Tier 1 ethics access." Darla froze. "That means she's not just some kid. She's authorized at the compliance level. And if she triggered something..." The lead trailed off. Behind them, one of the crew members muttered, "I heard her dad built part of the AI backend. The system's tied to something called Clearview." "Jesus," Darla whispered. That wasn't just a bluff. In the cockpit, the captain tapped furiously at the central ops tablet. Every command returned the same response. CN oversight lock active. Manual input disabled. Awaiting external authorization. The co-pilot turned. "This isn't like the other safety flags. We're not in control here." The captain frowned. "Then who is? 20,000 feet below. In a secured room inside Clearview Ethics Node HQ. A compliance specialist leaned forward. On screen, a live feed of the cabin, camera angle fixed on seat 2A, a still figure, a silver button on the armrest, a swollen cheek, calm eyes. A data feed pulsed quietly beside it. Biometric indicators, heart rate logs, facial recognition scan, no panic, no aggression, just one trigger, pressed deliberately. The specialist whispered to her colleague, "That's not an escalation. That's a message." On the plane, passengers began to murmur, "Why aren't we taking off? Didn't they close the door already?" "Technical issue. My ass. We've been stuck for 20 minutes. Leora said nothing. She remained in her seat, palms flat on her thighs, head down. Her thoughts ran wild. Did I overdo it? Should I have waited? What if they twist this? What if they say I caused a disruption? What if Dad's system isn't enough? Then, something caught her eye. The cabin screen above her seat flickered, just once. And in that flicker, she saw a word flash too fast for anyone else to notice. Recording. In the control tower at Atlanta International. An alert pinged on the director's tablet. Terminal block notification NR 1809 Gate 12B. Status inbound ethics lock. Class Tier 1 trigger. Subject Leora G. Win! The director cursed under his breath. He dialed the number at the bottom of the notice, Gabriel Wynn. Priority oversight contact. It rang once. "Dr. Wynn," came the cool, low voice. "This is control. We have a send lock from your daughter's access." "You knew this was coming. I suspected it might," Gabriel replied, voice steady. "Should we override? No." But the flight stalled. Then let the silence speak louder than their words. At that moment, on the plane, the intercom crackled again. The captain's voice was tighter now. We appreciate your patience as we complete a compliance verification requested by Central Operations. This is a standard procedure for maintaining the highest ethical standards across all Haven Sky flights. Passengers blinked. Ethical standards, Leora breathed slowly. Not because she felt calm, but because she had just learned something. The system wasn't broken. It was finally working. Leora Wynne sat motionless inside 2A, her fingers gripping the edge of the armrest like it might steady her thoughts. Outside the window, the runway lights blinked quietly, soft, indifferent. Inside, the cabin hummed with nervous energy, a shallow buzz of conversations, furrowed brows, side glances. But inside, Leora, everything was loud, too loud. What did you just do? The question looped in her head, her own voice, her father's voice, her mother's Celeste soft and firm, whispering across time. You pressed the button. Lo, are you sure it wasn't a mistake? Leora closed her eyes. The cheek where Darla slapped her still throbbed. She hadn't cried, but now she wanted to. Not because it hurt, but because part of her wished it had been enough to make her not press the button. Was this too far? Would the passengers blame her? Would her father's name be dragged? What if? What if the system misunderstood? She knew it was designed not to. She'd sat through hours of simulations with Gabriel, the biometric sensors, the voice inflection analyzers, the multi-source context calibration. Clearview was built to detect what people didn't say, what they were too tired, too scared, or too used to hiding. But none of that erased the doubt in her chest now. Because in the end, she wasn't just pressing a button. She was asking the world to listen to her. And that was terrifying. She pulled her knees up slightly in her seat. Hugged them. Something she hadn't done in years. Not since middle school, when a substitute teacher assumed she was in the wrong class. Not since the store clerk followed her for 3 aisles because you looked like someone who tried to run off with makeup last week. Not since TSA flagged her bag for unusual packing, even though it was just books and travel snacks. Each time, she had stayed quiet, told herself not to cause a scene, told herself it would pass, told herself to wait. But now she'd stopped waiting. She remembered what Gabriel once told her after a long night of writing code. You know why I built Scene? Because people don't listen. Not just that. Because people selectively listen. They hear what confirms their comfort. They ignore what threatens it. And this fixes that no system fixes people. But if it makes them look again, even once, we've already won. Leora's thoughts were interrupted by movement in the aisle. A young girl, maybe 9 or 10, had wandered slightly from her seat in row 5. She paused in front of Leora, stared, wide eyes, serious, then whispered, Are you the one who stopped the plane? Leora blinked. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe. The girl nodded, slowly, like she understood something the adults hadn't yet. She reached into her hoodie and pulled out a small, crumpled origami crane, pressed it into Leora's hand, then returned to her seat. Leora stared at the crane. It wasn't a trophy, or proof, or anything official. It was quiet, kind, a reminder that sometimes, even when the world doesn't say thank you, someone notices that you didn't stay silent, and that was enough now. In the cockpit, the co-pilot whispered to the captain, They've started the soft freeze. Every system from gate entry to crew conduct logs is now under external mirror review. The captain frowned. You mean the plane is flying, but we're grounded? Yes, sir. Morally, in the back rows, a man in a blazer muttered. All this over some teenager with a chip on her shoulder? But a woman beside him replied, "Or maybe she's got something we all forgot how to use boundaries." In seat 2A, Leora took a breath. Not to steel herself, not to cry, just to exist. Because sometimes, surviving a system wasn't about shouting louder. It was about pressing a button and letting the silence fill in the rest. In the North Annex of Atlanta International Airport, inside the glass-walled command center for Haven Sky Airlines, tension had turned the air brittle. Control tower directors, flight ops managers, and legal liaisons were all gathered around one terminal. No one touched the keyboard. No one spoke. Because no one knew what to do. The alert on the screen remained frozen in place. Send protocol active, NR 1809 Ethics Tier 1, lockdown. Triggered by authorized node passenger, Leora G. Win verification. Complete override disabled. The systems director, Harvey Tolman, wiped his forehead with the sleeve of his blazer. "She's... who?" Again, he asked, his voice low. A compliance officer cleared her throat. "Her father is Dr. Gabriel Wynn, architect of the Clearview Ethics Node. She has Tier 1 override access. Legal, certified, and on the books." Harvey stared at her. "You mean the kid who just grounded our flight is the one we licensed the watchdog system from?" The room went still. Meanwhile, down the corridor, someone else was watching the same feed through an encrypted satellite relay. Dr. Gabriel Wynn stood alone in a sealed ethics operations suite, eyes fixed on the dashboard. His daughter's name glowed softly against a dark screen. He didn't smile, didn't flinch. He simply said aloud, to no one, "You saw them. Now they'll have to see you." Back in the control tower, Harvey grabbed a phone. He called Federal Flight Oversight. The voice on the other end was already prepared. "Atlanta Tower. This is DC Compliance Sector 4. We've received your ping. We need to override. It's delaying a full route. No override permitted. It's a teenage girl. No. It's a protected stakeholder operating under verified escalation terms." "She's a child," the voice replied flatly. "She's a system witness now, 3 terminals away. In Washington, D.C. A Veritas liaison officer stepped into the FAA's ethics boardroom. She handed a printed report to the director. "Ethics trigger in-flight incident. Staff-initiated physical contact. Minor. Tier 1 access holder." The director tapped his pen. "The press doesn't have this yet. Not yet. But social media is moving fast. Hashtags are forming." He nodded. "What's the activation origin?" Seat 2O. Passenger refused to leave. Was physically reprimanded by crew. She pressed her Clearview device within 40 seconds. And then the aircraft began passive review lockdown. Current status. Still in taxi. Locked from Central Command. Awaiting ethics debrief. The director leaned back. "And now the entire airline's decision-making is..." "What under reflection?" The liaison replied quietly. "Yes, sir. That's how the protocol works. It doesn't punish. It freezes. It waits." Back on the flight, the pilot had stopped trying to explain the delay. Instead, he sat back, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the monitor, flashing, "Your aircraft is currently under SEN ethics review. Please await next instructions." The co-pilot finally spoke. "You think we're about to lose our license?" The captain replied without looking at him. "I think..." The world just shifted by a button press. In row 6, an older couple flipped through the safety pamphlet for the 5th time. In row 8, a lawyer quietly typed notes on a tablet, already planning internal policy updates. And in seat 2A, Leora sat still, watching everything, feeling nothing, yet everything. Because this time, the system that once ignored girls like her had been built to respond not with noise, but consequence. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, at Skylane Aviation's European command, an alert chimed. A manager glanced down. "Hey," she said slowly, "isn't that the U.S. ethics node we reviewed last quarter?" Her coworker leaned in. "You mean the one we said wouldn't get used until someone brave enough forced its hand? Now it had. And the world was watching." The cabin had grown quiet, but not peaceful. It was the silence that follows confusion, not resolution. The kind of silence where every glance has a question, and every passenger waits for someone else to break it. And then someone did. "Excuse me," a soft voice said, breaking through the humming stillness. It belonged to a woman mid-30s, sharp blue eyes, aviation badge tucked into the side of her belt. She leaned slightly toward seat 2A. "Leora." "Right." Leora Wynne didn't flinch. "Yes. I'm Elin Sandoval, first officer. May I sit?" Leora gave a slight nod. Elin didn't pull out the jump seat. She crouched next to her, keeping her voice low. Steady. "I know who your father is," she began. "I also know what that device on your armrest does." Leora looked down at the silver node. Its surface was smooth, cool, unreadable. "So you understand why I pressed it," Leora said softly. "I understand you had the right to," Elin replied. "But I want to know why you had to." Leora paused. A long breath, not a defensive one. Just worn. She didn't ask. She didn't check. She just saw me, in this seat, and assumed it couldn't be mine. And the slap Elin asked gently. Leora turned toward the window. Her voice was quieter than before. That wasn't punishment. It was confirmation that she didn't see me as someone who could even be right. Elin swallowed hard. She looked down. Her face shifted, not guilt, but realization. "We teach crew members to manage conflict, not create it," she said. "But sometimes they think they're protecting the space, when they're really just protecting their assumptions." Farther down the aisle, Darla Moffat stood rigid at the galley wall. She wasn't looking at Leora. She was staring at the overhead monitor. Still flashing. "Scene lock in effect ethics review. Pending undo disabled." Another crew member whispered behind her. "You really messed up." Darla's voice was hollow. She looked like a coach kid, like she didn't belong. "Yeah," the other attendant said. "And now she's the reason half the fleet might get audited." Darla didn't answer, because deep down, she knew this wasn't about a seat. It was about what her reaction had revealed. Back in seat 2A, Elin stood slowly. "I'll be honest with you, Leora. We've never flown through this before. The system, the consequences, the spotlight." Leora looked up, her expression unreadable. "I didn't want to be the spotlight," she said. "I just didn't want to be invisible." In the back of the plane, a whisper started to spread. That girl shut down the flight. No, she didn't. She did something. Look at the screen. The plane hasn't moved in 45 minutes. Passengers weren't angry anymore. They were curious, nervous, some even respectful. Because silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's just waiting for the right person to ask the right question. In Washington, a data review agent at the FAA hit enter on her keyboard. An internal flag went active. Passenger Leora Wynne status. Ethics Stakeholder Witness Public Interest Review, Level 2. Initiated, and with it, a second line appeared. Notify Legal. Notify Media Affairs. Notify DOJ Observer. On the plane. A man in row 3 stood up slowly, stretched, walked over to the flight attendant nearest him. "What did she do?" he asked. The attendant glanced at him, then toward the front of the plane. She pressed pause. She said, "And now, the plane's not the only thing that's grounded." Leora sat alone again. But this time, it didn't feel like isolation. It felt like stillness with purpose. Like the system wasn't watching her. It was watching them. And for one, that felt just. Some stories explode. Others, They thread their way through phone screens, hushed messages, backroom meetings, and then suddenly, everyone knows. This one began with a video, just 37 seconds, posted by a teenage boy in row 4 who had quietly recorded the moment Darla Moffat slapped Leora Wynn. No one expected it to spread. He didn't even caption it. Just wrote she said her dad owns the airline's ethics system. She wasn't kidding. Sight to send trigger, Somrower's clear view. Lockdown, mo justice of 30K feet. In the first hour, 24,000 views. In the second, 112,000. By the third, it hit trending on multiple platforms. The reactions were fast and sharp. That girl didn't say a word. She just pressed a button and froze an entire flight. Respect. Wait, she is the daughter of Dr. Gabriel Wynn, the man behind the ethics AI protocols. This is what real accountability looks like. Built in, cold, quiet. Darla Moffat needs to be removed from every flight immediately. Why is it always black girls who have to be perfectly calm just to be believed? And then someone found the footage from the Clearview promotional archive. A clip of Gabriel and a young Leora sitting together, demoing the ethics node on a test plane. She couldn't have been more than 12 in the video. Hair in a high puff, soft smile. Gabriel saying gently, "One day, someone like her will need this system to listen when people won't." Now it had. Meanwhile, inside Haven Sky's corporate office in downtown Atlanta, the comms director rushed into the boardroom. They've ID'd her. Who asked the VP of Ops? Seat 2A, Leora G. Wynn. The room froze. She's not just any passenger. She's registered as a Tier 1 Clearview observer. Silence, the chief legal officer asked. Are we exposed? The director held up a phone showing a screen-recorded TikTok thread. You tell me, in a small apartment in Chicago, Celeste Wynn sat on her couch, eyes wide, holding her tea untouched. The news played in the background. Beach O'Hore. As the Clearview ethics lockdown continues aboard Flight NR 1809, the FAA confirms that the trigger was a minor 15-year-old Leora Wynn, daughter of ethics systems architect Dr. Gabriel Wynn. Celeste exhaled slowly. My baby. But she wasn't surprised. Not really. Back on the plane, a notification chimed on Leora's device. She glanced down. Clearview. Secure feed node activity detected. External attention engaged. Primary observer log active. Auto recording enabled. All further interaction documented for federal review. Another ping followed seconds later. Dad, I see you. I'm proud of you. Breathe. She swallowed the lump in her throat. In Washington, D.C., a Justice Department staffer looked up from her desk. You seeing this? Another agent nodded. Yeah. She didn't scream, didn't protest, just logged it. That's what makes it terrifying for them. Down in the Haven Sky PR war room, one junior manager whispered to her boss, You think she planned to go viral? Naaman, her boss said, rubbing his temples. I think she planned to survive. The rest was the system catching up. By hour 6, media vans had parked outside Atlanta International. Journalists buzzed through terminals with cameras and open mics. Passengers on board NR 189 were starting to realize the magnitude of what they were part of. A woman in row 5 leaned across the aisle. "Is it true she's the daughter of the guy who invented airline ethics software?" "Yup," said a man in row 6. "And she just made all of us part of the first real-time compliance freeze." A hush settled over that section. In 2A, Leora stared ahead. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. But in her pocket, she clutched the origami crane the little girl had given her earlier and whispered one sentence to herself. "I didn't make this loud. I just made it heard." The world was watching now. But inside seat 2A, all Leora Wynne could feel was the weight of it. Not the attention, not the trending hashtags, not even the praise, but the question echoing louder than applause. Did I do the right thing? She hadn't moved in over an hour. The plane was still grounded. Send lock still active. The engines were cold. But her chest, it was burning. She could feel the tremble in her fingertips, hidden beneath her sleeves. Out of sight, just like her fear, she remembered the look on the gate agent's face. How certain they'd been that her past was fake. How used to being dismissed she had become. It wasn't even rage anymore. It was erosion. Little pieces chipped away every time someone didn't believe her, didn't ask, didn't look. And now she had forced the world to look. But it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like exposure. A soft voice came from behind her. "Miss Wynne." It was the lead compliance officer, who had just boarded from the jet bridge escorted by a federal observer and a Clearview ethics rep. The woman sat across the aisle, respectful distance, tablet in hand, eyes careful, not threatening, not warm either, just aware. "We're here to document and debrief. But first, I wanted to ask..." A pause. "Are you okay?" Leora blinked. That question shouldn't have felt surprising, but it did. "I don't know," she answered honestly. The woman nodded. "Would you like to tell us what led to the trigger?" Leora didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down at the silver device resting on her tray table. The button still glowed faint blue. "I didn't want to be here," she said softly. "I didn't want to be seen like this. But I was tired of being invisible." In another row, a passenger began filming again. This time, not out of curiosity but reverence. Because now, people weren't just watching, they were listening. Leora looked back at the compliance officer. "She hit me," she said plainly. "But it wasn't about pain. It was about position. She needed to remind me I didn't belong. And the button the woman asked, I didn't press it to punish her," Leora said, voice steadier now. "I pressed it to prove the system could work, that it would respond, that it wouldn't wait until it was too late." On the tarmac, Gabriel Wynne stood just outside the operations center, arms crossed, watching a live feed on his device. Celeste stood beside him now. "She's not just proving a point," Celeste whispered. "She's carrying your entire vision. Alone." Gabriel's voice was low, heavy. She shouldn't have had to. Back on board, the compliance officer tapped gently on her tablet. "Do you want to continue the process in private?" Leora hesitated, then shook her head. "No," she said. "If I pressed it in front of everyone, then I want them to see why." The little girl from earlier peeked over the seat back again. This time, she didn't say anything. She just gave a tiny smile. Leora gave one back. Small, but real. Somewhere in a downtown law office, an airline attorney scrolled through the news feed. Flight 1809 still grounded. Ethics probe in progress. Systemic changes pending. He cursed under his breath, but his assistant said softly, You know what's wild. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just pressed a button, and the world stopped. In seat 2A, Leora sat upright now. Not taller, just clearer. She wasn't the threat. She was the mirror. And this whole planet, this whole system was finally being forced to look. The plane was still grounded, but the turbulence had moved far beyond the clouds. While flight NR 1809 remained silent on the tarmac, the noise outside had become deafening. At Haven Sky's corporate headquarters, 4 floors of executives were now in full emergency mode. A wall-length screen lit up with media clips, hashtags, and headlines. Teen activates ethics lock mid-flight. FAA confirms protocol. Breach passenger identified as Leora Wynn, daughter of scene founder Gabriel Wynn. Flight attendant suspended after assault. Triggered Clearview freeze around the table. Voices clashed. This could cost us our license. Not if we control the narrative. No controlling the narrative is what got us here. That came from Amira Lewis, VP of Compliance. She stood while the others sat, calm, poised, but her eyes burned. She didn't just trigger a button. She triggered a reckoning. At the FAA, emails flew. Internal memo effective immediately. All commercial airlines utilizing the Clearview system must update their ethics response training and discrimination protocol by end of quarter. DOJ internal preliminary findings suggest historic noncompliance by multiple flight crews on ethics-based incidents. Public inquiry may follow. The storm had outgrown the plane. Now, it was an industry facing the mirror. Meanwhile, Darla Moffa was escorted from the aircraft. No handcuffs, no shouting, just silence and eyes. Passengers didn't jeer, they didn't speak, they watched, some with contempt, others with reflection, because many had assumed, too. They just hadn't acted on it. But they'd felt it. And now that was the discomfort settling in. Inside the terminal, a protest had started. It wasn't large yet, maybe 30 people. But their signs were precise. Black girls deserve first class too. Believe us the first time. Accountability at 30,000 feet. If a button has to fix your behavior, the system is broken. Leora saw it through the glass as she stepped off the plane under FAA protection. She blinked in disbelief. "Are they here for me?" she whispered. One woman in the crowd saw her, raised her fist gently, and mouthed "thank you." Leora didn't wave back, but she nodded. Once. And that was enough. In a brightly lit newsroom, a senior anchor shuffled her notes. "We're live in 3, 2, camera on. This morning, Haven Sky Airlines faces intense scrutiny after a minor was assaulted in a first-class seat by one of its own flight attendants, an incident that was only revealed when the teen activated a rarely used ethics override built into the Clearview system. The teen, Leora Wynn, daughter of the software's architect, and perhaps the catalyst for a new era of air travel accountability. On a quiet rooftop in Des Moines, Gabriel Wynn sat alone, phone in hand, watching, not smiling, just breathing. Because it wasn't pride he felt, it was gravity. The system worked, he whispered, but it was never supposed to come down to her. And in a quiet government chamber, a senator leaned back in his chair. "This Clearview thing, it's bigger than we thought." His aide nodded. "Should we prepare hearings?" The senator looked at the screen, paused on the image of a 15-year-old girl, sitting upright in seat 2A, silent but undeniable. "Yes," he said. "Let's bring everyone to the table." Leora sat in a holding room with a bottle of water and a silent officer nearby. She finally opened her notebook. Page 1. A single sentence she'd written days ago. People don't change when you yell at them. They change when they see what they've become. And now she had shown them. The invitation came at dawn. A sleek, silver-lettered envelope slid under her hotel room door. No knock, no escort, just quiet. Inside, you are formally invited to speak before the National Ethics and Equity Review Board. Format open testimony. Location Capitol, hearing room 4C. Date tomorrow. Your voice matters. She stared at it. Her hands didn't tremble this time. Later that afternoon, seated in a private prep room in D.C., Leora Wynn faced her reflection in the mirror. No designer clothes, no curated hair, just her, a 15-year-old black girl in a pressed navy sweater, worn jeans, and clear eyes. Across from her, Amira Lewis from Haven Sky sat reviewing notes. "You don't have to do this," Amira said quietly. "You've already done enough." Leora looked up. "That's the thing," she said softly. "If I stop now, I'm just the girl who pressed a button." She paused. "But if I keep going, I become the girl who changed what happens after it's pressed." The hearing room was sterile, wood-paneled, packed. Cameras lined the walls. On the long table sat 10 panelists, government reps, tech advisors, industry heads, but all eyes were on the single chair at the center. She walked toward it with silent confidence. One of the panelists cleared her throat. "Miss Wynn, you may begin." Leora unfolded a single sheet of paper, then didn't read it. She folded it again, set it aside, and looked them in the eye. "I've spent the last week being told I was brave," she said slowly. "But I wasn't brave when I pressed that button. I was cornered." Gasps rustled through the gallery. "I was tired of whispering, tired of hoping, tired of having to be perfectly polite just to be left alone." She looked at the senator from the earlier clip. "I didn't ask to carry this responsibility, but now that I have, I want to make sure no one else has to." One board member leaned forward. "What would you change?" "Miss Wynn." Leora inhaled. "Then train flight crews like they train pilots, because people's dignity is just as important as safety protocols. Make accountability visible, not hidden behind badges and apologies that come too late. And finally, don't make kids responsible for adult failures. Build systems that protect us before we bleed." A hush fell across the room. The youngest panelist, an ethics engineer, barely out of college, whispered, "She didn't give a speech. She handed us a blueprint." News outlets across the country replayed her testimony by nightfall. Headlines changed. "Flight 1809 Girl Speaks Before Congress. Leora Wynn challenges industry to do better. She didn't cry. She constructed." In classrooms, students discussed her words. In offices, HR departments scrambled to update bias training. And on TikTok, a new sound went viral. Leora's voice saying, "People don't change when you yell at them. They change when they see what they've become." Back in her hotel room, Leora sat on the floor, shoes off, TV muted, just silence and soft city lights outside. Her mom, Celeste, entered quietly, carrying a cup of hot cocoa. They didn't speak at first. Then Celeste said, "You made the world listen today." Leora gave a small, tired smile. "I didn't want power," she murmured. "I wanted peace." Celeste wrapped an arm around her. "I think," she said, "you're starting to find both." 1 week later, a new boarding pass, a different flight, same airline. Flight NR 777 from D.C. to San Francisco. This time, Leora Wynn stood at the gate with her backpack slung over one shoulder, her curls free, her posture light, not defiant, just steady. The terminal buzzed, but she was calm. a quiet resolve in her chest. Not because she'd forgotten, but because she remembered it all and stood anyway. As she approached the first-class lane, the gate agent, a young man in his 20s, looked up, startled. Then his eyes widened. Recognition, but not fear. Respect. "Miss Wynne," he said gently, scanning her pass. "Welcome aboard. We're honored to have you." He didn't check it twice. He didn't raise an eyebrow. Just a small nod, then a gesture forward. And for the first time in her life, Leora walked into first class without having to prove she deserved it. The cabin was quiet. No gasps, no sideways glances. In fact, the man across the aisle offered her his bottle of water as she settled into seat 2A. She smiled, not out of obligation, but out of something that had taken her all 12 parts of this story to reclaim trust. At cruising altitude, a flight attendant approached, middle-aged, soft eyes, slight nervousness in her hands. "I just wanted to say," she whispered, "your speech. It changed how we're trained now." Leora tilted her head, curious. The attendant continued, "They play it in onboarding. The part where you said, 'Dignity is just as important as safety protocols.' That's the first thing new hires hear." She smiled, a little embarrassed. "I hope that's okay." Leora's voice was warm. "It's more than okay. It means someone was listening." An hour into the flight, the captain came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flight NR777. Special acknowledgement to Miss Leora Wynne traveling with us today. We're proud to be a part of a new chapter in aviation ethics and equity." Soft applause rose in the cabin. Leora blinked, stunned. A tear welled unbidden, but earned. When she landed, a reporter tried to catch her at the terminal. Leora Wynne, quote, "Do you feel like justice was served?" She paused, looked past the lens, then said, "Justice isn't when the system punishes someone for hurting you. It's when the system protects you before they even try." That night, she returned home to find her father, Gabriel, waiting on the porch. He didn't say anything, just held out a hand. In his palm, a small silver token. The prototype Clearview button, the very first one. "I made it for safety," he said. "You gave it purpose." Leora held it between her fingers. Cool metal, warm history. She didn't put it in her pocket. She put it on her desk right next to her notebook, now filled with ideas for what came next. Because while this flight was over, the journey had only just begun. She didn't yell. She didn't fight back with fists. She pressed a button and made the world listen. Leora Wynne's journey isn't just about injustice. It's about what comes after. It's about systems and silence and the cost of assuming someone doesn't belong. This story reminds us discrimination doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it smiles, and sometimes it wears a uniform. But when a 15-year-old girl forces corporations, lawmakers, and strangers to confront the truth, you realize this wasn't just a flight. It was a reckoning. Let this story sit with you. Let it challenge you. Let it remind you of the quiet strength so many carry every day, unseen and unheard. If this story moved you, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel, then like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Because the next time injustice flies at 30,000 feet, we won't just watch. We'll speak, we'll act, and we'll change everything.